And this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
You three kings came down here to win championships. Not one,
not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven.
And we're going to have fun. Yeah, it's going to be Hollywood down here. Yeah.
Let's get it done, man. Let's get this thing done. We believe we can win multiple championships if we take care of business and do it the right way.
Hurlburt Field near Fort Walton Beach, Florida is more than just an Air Force base. It's an area vital to U.S. national security. Special operations personnel are trained here for deployment all over the globe. And this week, the Miami Heat took step one in their special operation, Operation NBA Title, a free agent coup unprecedented in league history over the summer. And the big three, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, and teammates in the final night at the Adderholt Complex in what's going to be very special and will really move with some scrimmaging, full bore. And we welcome you to Real Training Camp. Vince Cellini alongside Mike Fratello, and let's get real. Let's get really, really real. At an Air Force base for NBA training camp, a place that builds focus, unity, and togetherness. Was it mission accomplished for the Heat?
A calculated gamble by Pat Riley and the coaching staff to move their training camp for the first time ever out of Miami and take it away in an isolated area. They found what they feel the perfect spot, the Air Force Base, where the players have slept together in the same hotel. They had to bring in extra beds, longer beds for the players to be able to fit in. They have not left the campus grounds. They have 3 meals together each day. They've been able to explore other areas of the Air Force Base, been exposed to different techniques that they use in hand-to-hand combat. They've actually had a chance to fly some simulator planes, and it's just been a great all-around experience, and the camp itself has been fantastic.
They've really hunkered down here. You had a chance to speak with third-year head coach Eric Spoelstra. Now, he's been dealt really a fantasy league team, okay? And that's great in many areas, but he better win. He better win a lot. And there's some pressure on Eric this year.
You inherit 3 great players like Bosh, Wade, and LeBron James. But with that comes the pressure of handling them and figuring it out. How do they work together? How do we make this thing right at both ends of the floor? And he noticed, every year we all know that the Heat play hard. They're one of the hardest playing teams in the NBA, night in and night out. Last year in training camp, Eric Spoelstra said we had a great training camp, we played hard. But this year, it's a different level. The talent is so much different, and you can see it in their practices. If there's one word that jumps out, it's speed.
No question about it. Bosh called it the toughest training camp he has ever taken part in. Now, we mentioned the military presence here. It's everywhere, Mike, everywhere you look, and 225 folks will take in each half in the Adderholt Complex, and they'll trade that out. Now, these are special ops people, some of them who are back from deployment and being rewarded by getting a chance to watch this NBA team perform. And these are special people, these special ops types.
Yeah, when you say special, it's a very unique group. And Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley have brought in, during the course of practices, a number of these people who have spoken to the team about what it was like for them to come back from their missions. There's one group that they met with. They started out 1,000 strong. When they narrowed it down, it was 58 people left, all trying to graduate from this program. Only 6 of the 58. There's 6 of the finest, 6 of the best. And these are people that are sent to other countries to take care of business for our country that they have to be able to take care of, and they do it so well.
Certain jobs that they have to take care of, and they take care of it well. All right, tonight, what's the schedule like for the Miami Heat? A little bit different tonight, Mike.
Yeah, Eric Spoelstra did not want to have a practice before these 2 halves of scrimmaging. So he let him come in, stretch a little bit, get some shooting in. He only went 1 practice yesterday. This will be day 4, practice 7 for the Miami Heat. So they'll play 2 20-minute halves, take about 15 or 20 minutes off in between both halves. In the first half, he wants to try and divide both teams evenly, try to make it a balanced attack at both ends of the floor. In the second half, you're going to see him put his main guys together on the same team.
We're going to get a real treat.
You bet.
That'll be fun. LeBron James, certainly a lightning rod for this team coming in. took an amazing amount of criticism after he made the decision to come here. But he has been all business in training camp. They've talked about how he's been a facilitator on offense. He's been very vocal on defense. I think he's playing with a chip on his shoulder, Mike. He has a lot of proof.
There's no question about that. And think about this. For the last 7 years in Cleveland, LeBron James is the focal point of every Cleveland practice. Now suddenly he walks into somebody else's gym. This is Dwayne Wade's facility. This is Dwayne Wade, who was the voice that was heard every day. And it's a little bit like, I go back to the United States Olympic team when they were practicing, and Kobe Bryant for the first 2 days said very little, if anything, because you had Wade there, you had LeBron there, you had Jason Kidd there. And Kobe was trying to figure out, when do I assert myself? When is the right time? And after about 2 days, then you started to hear him heat up a little bit more. And by the end of their practices, it was Kobe and LeBron going nose to nose against each other. And it made for such a great U.S. Olympic team. Well, that's what LeBron had to figure out. When do I start asserting myself? When should my voice be heard?
You know, we talked a lot, especially when this actually transpired and they all got on the same roster, about who will take that last second shot in games. Who is it going to be to? Who is going to be the man down the stretch? How important is it to think about that now? And maybe you could speculate, as a coach, how would you run that particular situation late in games? And again, it's all speculation at this point.
Well, Vince, you asked one of the toughest questions there for a coach. When you have 3 stars like Miami does, then another terrific player in Mike Miller, who's taken many big shots in his career, how do I satisfy the people, and what's the right thing to do at the end of the games? And you have to figure all this out through the process of the practices, sitting, talking, film work, and an understanding. What we must realize as outsiders, the loyalty is Dwayne Wade first. Dwayne Wade's been here, Eric Spoelstra. This is 16 years in the Miami organization for Eric Spoelstra. Dwayne Wade is part of that championship run. There's only 2 guys left on this roster, Haslam and Wade from the championship team. LeBron hasn't won a championship, but what you also have is one of the best passers and most unselfish people in LeBron James. So maybe you look at it and you say, Wade's my guy at the end of the games. Bosh, if we're going to go against the big guy and try and attack that spot. And I've got a guy at 6'8", 260 pounds, who may be the best passer in the league that can find either one of them.
And you mentioned Miller. Let's talk a little bit about the depth of this team. When Pat Riley started the construction and really gutted this squad, we thought, geez, is he going to be able to get warm bodies who can stand up and try to fill out a roster if indeed he made all of these signings? He's done that. I think he's done a lot more, Mike.
Yeah, I remember back when the big 3 all came together, and it was known to everyone that they'd be joining the Miami team. And the first reaction from many people around the country were, well, yeah, he got those 3, but look, they have nobody else on their roster. They've depleted it and given everybody else away. But look at the great job that Pat Riley did. Yeah, you lose a guy like Michael Beasley, okay, a very high pick in the draft. Jermaine O'Neal, who had to battle injuries at the center position. Richardson, who shoots threes, gives them toughness on defense. But who do you pick up in return? A tremendous group of players as far as balance goes. You have 9 players on this roster that can play in the front court. You have 6, and then if you take LeBron and make him 7, that can play in the back court. So there's great flexibility. He surrounded the stars with shooters. Mike Miller shot 48% from the three-point line. Eddie House, a terrific shooter from the perimeter. You want a shooting big man? Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Chris Bosh. So you've got pieces all over the place.
Well, he has options. There's no question about that. Do you also have to have personalities at this point, veteran personalities who are going to know what their role is in terms of coming here? I mean, it's going to be clear-cut. You understand going in what we want from you. Players like Z.
Zydrunas Ilgauskas knows, after so many years, 12 years in the NBA, been an all-star twice, been a starter for so many games in his career. He understands coming here that when I come into the game, they're probably going to run side pick and rolls. He'll pop to shoot jump shots. His role, along with Joel Anthony's, McGlore's, they all have special things that they can do.
So in terms of that, round out for me, and again, I want you to play coach, round out for me the rest of this starting 5. If you had to pick 2 guys right now to be in that starting 5 with the big 3, who would those 2 players be for you?
Well, you know, during the course of a game, LeBron James is going to rotate over into the point guard spot. So now what are you trying to get out of your point guard? He needs to be a good decision maker on the break in transition because they want to get out and run. This team was at the bottom of the league in fast break points last season. You want a guy who can control the ball, push it ahead, make good decisions, and he's got to defend. So the obvious one seems to be Mario Chalmers, although last year down the stretch, Carlos Arroyo beat out Chalmers and wound up finishing very, very strong. They had great confidence in Arroyo. And then in the other spot, well, Anthony is a shot blocker, offensive rebounder. So you start out with him at the center spot, you rotate Z in, you rotate McGlure in, and then you eventually put Bosch in there.
What's funny, you look at Juwan Howard on the roster. In 1996, he had that $100 million deal with the Miami Heat that was later vetoed by the commissioner. It's a little over $1 million, about 1.4 now. So that's quite a difference in salary for Juwan Howard. But, you know, again, longtime veteran, 16 years in the league, and a guy you can rely on. You love to have those guys on your roster.
I'm not sure that they didn't intentionally in the beginning want to bring him in as a tutor, mentor, kind of like what Alonzo Mourning did, okay, in his last years in playing. But now they see the value that he has. He had such a terrific year last year for Portland, stepping in when all the injuries took place. So they pick him up, add him to the roster. He'll be valuable to them. Maybe not as much on the floor, maybe more so in the locker room behind the scenes.
Well, we hear in the background, proud to be an American being sung here, and it's part of the festivities tonight. Again, we want to, and the Heat wants to honor many of the military personnel on the base here at Hurlburt Field. So it's just a very special place, Mike. And once again, you talked about some of the speakers that Riley and Spoelstra had come talk to the team, and you know, you get the message. You know, it's not all about basketball, and I think for these players, they realize another important thing. In winning, a lot of it's sacrifice. Will you sacrifice part of your game?
They had a gentleman come in and speak to the team yesterday. He had done his duty, his tour, was injured, was hit in the face with shrapnel, came back, they operated, rebuilt his eye socket all over again, and he went back over again for another tour of duty. And I think it made the players like kind of sit back and go, wow. I mean, you make it back alive, and then you go back again because, you know, that's maybe his form of being a great competitor.
All right, so you're coaching against these guys. What do you tell your fellas as you're in the locker room getting ready to take on this year's version of the Miami Heat? I mean, strategically, what are you telling the guys here?
You know, normally it's hard enough to figure out how you're going to try and stop one of those three stars. Now you've got three of them to try and figure it out. And how do you match up? That's your first, concern. How am I going to match up? If I try to take this guy out of it, am I so weak over on this other guy? If I'm trying to take Wade out of it, who do I put on LeBron? So LeBron if I try to take LeBron out of it, does Wade kill us? Matchups will be a nightmare for the opposition.
Do you think it's going to be a distraction at all for Eric Spoelstra to have the media saying, well, Riley's there, Riley's in the wings, it's happened before, there's precedent here for Pat Riley coming down and taking over the coaching job? Or is that something that these guys will learn to live with and maybe winning will cure?
I heard a coach many, many years ago say, you shouldn't take a position in coaching if you're afraid to win. And you want to be put in a situation where you have an opportunity to win the whole thing, to win big, and that's a championship. So you can't have fear of coaching greatness. They have greatness on this team. Eric Spoelstra knows exactly what this is all about. He was Pat Riley's assistant. He was Stan Van Gundy's assistant. Stan Van Gundy, during the course of the season, went in and asked to step down. Pat Riley took over and wound up coaching. There's Pat Riley right there, the president of the Miami Heat. Pat Riley came back in during that season and coached that team to a championship, as he had done, with the Lakers in Los Angeles a number of times. So, yes, is he there? Is he a presence? Yes, but I can tell you, the last thing Pat Riley wants to do right now is come back and coach this team. He would like to see Eric Spoelstra succeed.
But, those Armani suits are all lined up in the closet. He still looks good and fit, and, you could plug him in. Not that we're saying that should happen or that's going to happen, but you're right. He's an enormous presence there. And I would think in many ways to Spoelstra, he's a guy that he can turn to for advice.
Of course, you like having a person there in the program with you that players respect, that it's another voice that you can say to him, maybe you pulling so-and-so on the side and talking to him, maybe it'll make a bigger impact.
All right, let's go on the floor now, the presentation of the colors and our national anthem.
what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Well, there you have it. That's on the floor at the Adderholt Complex. We are getting ready to start. And once again, Mike, if folks are just joining us, you can explain the structure for tonight. It's a little bit different than your normal practice.
2 20-minute halves. They'll take a break of about 15 to 20 minutes in between both halves. Right now in the first half, Eric Spoelstra, the head coach, has tried to divide up the teams evenly, see how competitive it will wind up being. Then in the second 20-minute session, he's going to load up the one team, okay, with all the main guys and see how they play together.
Isn't that like taking the sports car out and you're going to take it out and really open it up and see what it can do?
He wants to get a look at this, and he was concerned, and his assistant started laughing. He mentioned earlier tonight that, you know, we've worked so long on defense in practice so far. I don't know if I have enough offense in for them to run, and the assistants reassured him that the players knew where the rim was. They find a way to get the ball up there somehow.
Do you think they'll come up with a creative way to score on their own?
Yeah, they kind of get the idea of who is able to put points on the board.
Expectations it sometimes can be a tough thing no matter how talented you are. And really, Mike, can you reach back and think of a team that had more expectations on it and a team that hasn't played a regular season game yet than this Miami Heat squad?
The way this whole thing came together, it's quite different than what happened with the Bulls, okay? And I'm talking about the Bulls team that won 72 games, the most games ever during the course of a regular season. And remember, on that team, you had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Tony Kukoc. You also had a guy named Dennis Rodman that averaged 15 rebounds a game during that particular season. So people are saying that this group of Miami Heat players can beat the 72-win record. I'm not sure. That's a very, very difficult thing to do. But those are the expectations that have been placed out in front of them. And as a couple of the players have said in interviews already, you know, we can't have crisis management take place if we happen to lose 2 games in a row. It could happen during the course of the season.
Yeah, but that is going to be magnified during the season. A 2-game losing streak is going to be monumental for this Heat team. They'll say, what's wrong with the Heat? Why can't they win?
Well, the one thing you always have to deal with are injuries, and you hope that no team, particularly a team that, you know, has a legitimate chance to contend for a championship, isn't hit with a serious injury, because that's part of the formula for winning a championship. You have to have a little bit of luck and stay healthy.
Udonis Haslem is a name that we haven't mentioned during the course of the broadcast here, but very important, and a guy who left some $14 million on the table possibly in free agency to come back here and be a part of this. And he said, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that this big 3 thing works. He wants it to work.
Yeah, and what you were talking about, the $14 million, other teams were willing to offer him the full mid-level exception. He took less than that to be able to fit into the plan that Pat Riley had in putting this squad together. Took less money, probably total, as you mentioned, close to $14 million. We see the step-up steal, and that's one of the things great about this team. They will be so good at the defensive end, and then the ability to convert defense into easy points on offense. But going back to Haslem, his first sacrifice came last year when he agreed to come off the bench, not be a starter for him last year, and he played extremely well in that spot. We also know at the end of games, don't be surprised if he's on the floor, because he's such a tough defender, hard-nosed rebounder.
Well, he does the dirty work, right? He's a guy, and doesn't every team have to have that type of player, a guy who's going to stick his nose in there and play hard?
And then when that guy, as Udonis has, improves his 17-foot jump shot to the point that he can keep Giannis in games, that much better. Again, out in transition, easy score. for the white team.
Yeah, pretty good. Now, last year, again, it's an entirely different roster. Spoelstra had a good defensive team last year. They did a great job in points allowed. They were second in the league. Field goal percentage allowed. They were very highly ranked. So this is already, the mentality's already in place defensively, yes?
When you look at stats from a year ago, Miami was terrific at the defensive end in 4 or 5 categories. At the offensive end, they were at the bottom of the league in 4 or 5 categories. Points scored, fast break points, that type of thing. It was a different paced team last year. They approached last season, I thought Eric Spoelstra and the staff did an incredible job, of winning 47 games, of taking the 5th spot in the Eastern Conference, because what they did is they kept the game close, knowing that if they kept it close in the last 2 minutes, they've got a star that can win it for them. If they tried to play full tilt, all out during the course of the game, they may have been down 16 or 18 going into the last 2 minutes. There's no way he can pull it out then.
But just by accident, they'll be better than the 25th. I mean, in terms of points, they're going to. Where do you anticipate them being? Top 5?
Well, this team certainly, when you've got 2 guys that have been in the top 3 or 4 scorers in the league the last 4 or 5 seasons, obviously points become easier for this team. You have 3 people capable of putting 20 to 25 points on the board each night for them. I would think shots will come a little more quickly. They'll obviously try to attack in transition. Their defense, which was so solid and so good a year ago, is going to be better this year because they're bigger, faster, stronger than they were a year ago.
Give me the Bosch perspective on this. He was a double-double machine, great career with the Toronto Raptors. Comes here now. He's kind of the other guy in the big 3, and that might suit him fine. Why will he benefit with everything else that's taking place with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James?
When you are the man on a team, as he was up in Toronto down the stretch, everybody was focused in on Chris Bosh. It's easier to double team him. When you have 3 players of the magnitude that the Heat do, it's tough to start doubling those people because then you're in full rotations. You weaken yourself on the boards as far as boxing out positions go. So he will wind up getting more easy shots than he's faced for a long, long time.
All right, I'll ask you another tough question now as we're in the midst of this first half of the scrimmage. Why might it not work for the Heat?
Well, if they cannot submerge their egos, if they're not willing to share the basketball, understand that tonight it might be player A's night, but the next night it might be player B, and player A has to be willing to step back. He can't try to take last night and make tonight last night because it might be another guy's turn that next night. And are you willing to do that? You might fall from this assistance. You may not be top 3 scorers in the league. You might drop to 7, 8, 9, or 10 in the league in scoring. So you'll have to give up personal stats for the success of the team. And if that is accomplished, if this molding together that's going on here, the blending of personalities takes place, and remember, each of these stars gave up a lot of money, Vince, to come and sign the contract. They could have made way more money, going elsewhere, staying where they were. Instead, they were willing to sacrifice money to play together and try and win a championship.
Interesting play there in transition, LeBron. That's what he does so well. And do you think, maybe this is LeBron's chance to really embrace that role as a guy who distributes, sort of that hybrid point forward. And like you said, Pat Riley sold it to him coming here as comparing him to one of the greatest players in history.
Well, Pat Riley coached Magic Johnson. Magic at 6'9", point guard, could see over the defense, very unselfish. Didn't matter to him how many points he scored. What he cared about was winning championships, which is what he did. And LeBron, I think Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra saw in LeBron many of the same characteristics that Magic Johnson had. Now, if you put 2 guys on either side of LeBron, both who are capable of scoring 25 points, maybe it makes LeBron that much happier that he can play basketball, play an intelligent game. He's got great basketball IQ, and now has guys that can finish on both sides.
Mike averaged 8.6 assists a game last year. That is far and away the all-time record for a forward in a single season. How impressive is that stat alone to you?
Well, let me ask you before you ask me.
Well, I already asked you, but you can ask me back.
Can he average a triple-double? That's the question people are asking.
This day and age, I don't know if he can average a triple-double. Now, if everything was the same night after night and we could control the experiment, maybe. But you don't think that's going to be the case, do you? Situations vary.
Well, you see how close he came, a year ago in Cleveland, where he's over 8 assists a game. He's over just almost at 8 rebounds a game, besides the points that he averaged. My concern would be that this team gets so good that they go into fourth quarters and they're up 20, 25 points on an opponent. And will Eric Spoelstra, if you're playing back-to-back games, 3 games in 4 nights, 4 games in 5 nights, will he say, hey, sit down right now, we'll put the other guys in? Remember, this team has 5 starters coming off the bench. Guys who were starters in their career. Udonis Haslem, right, coming off the bench. Zydrunas Ilgauskas coming off the bench. 5 different ones here that have all been starters in their career. So that's not too bad. I think you can probably close the game out with a 25-point lead.
Let's talk about the center position and what we think the Heat will demand from that 5 spot, because that seems to be maybe the biggest question mark in terms of actual functional center, true center, but a lot of teams can actually have that problem. What do you see as far as how they're going to work that center position?
If you look at this roster, the 2 points that jump out at you and you say, well, here's where they might be weak. One is the point guard spot, and the other is the center position. And sometimes you have to do it by committee. The point guard spot, you'll start out with whether it's Arroyo starting out or Chalmers, either one, and you'll slide either Wade into handling the ball or LeBron into handling the ball at times during the course of the game. As far as the centers go, by committee. We talked about Juwan Howard. We talked about Joel Anthony, offensive rebounder, shot blocker. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, jump shooter facing the basket. Guys that can do dirty work down there. McGlure, a big physical presence to go up against the big physical centers. They'll use all 4 of them, and then when they want their finesse center, that will be Bosch's turn to go in. And imagine, you can take Bosch, stick him out at the top of the 3-point line, and run your offense from there with him dealing the ball or shooting the ball from that range.
Look at Big Z getting up and down the floor. He's looking pretty good.
Z came in with over 13% body fat, almost 13.5% body fat. He is now down to 9% body fat. Each of these players, since they came to Miami and started working out on their own, and then official practice started this week, each of them are in incredible shape right now. The body fat, their weights are all right where the staff wants them.
Well, Mike, you know that when you have your stars working hard in practice every day, pushing themselves, making sure they're right, the rest of the guys fall into place. You have to, if you respect yourself and your superstars.
When your best players are not afraid to take the lead, and by example, you know, some leaders are vocal leaders. You hear their voice, they'll talk to the team. Other leaders just lead by their play. Larry Bird wasn't a big talker, but they knew when it was time to practice, Larry Bird was the first one doing everything that had to be done in practice that day. He led by example. A look from Larry Bird might tell a player, hey, you need to get in gear here and catch up with what we're doing or what's going on. Whereas other guys like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson might be more vocal in talking to the team about what we have to do right now.
I think it's a little bit of both with this Heat team. While they take a break, we'll do the same. Real training camp continues with the Miami Heat right after this.